Safe, let me ask you something about. I want to get back to football here and these quarterbacks. If I gave you Arch Manning, Nussmeier, Lagway, Sellers, Mateer. Okay, Manning, Sellers, Mateer, Lagway, and Nussmeier. Would you take that five? And I don't know who your fifth is in the Big Ten, so I'm going to let you fill it in. Over Aller, Altmaier, Mendoza. Who's
More.
I'm going to let him do. Who's 4 or 5 for you?
I would have Raiola in there.
Okay, so Dylan.
If you're putting in DJ Lagway, I feel confident that Raiola is going to be better than him. So
Cue the madman over here. Okay, so Raiola, and give me the fifth.
Nico. I mean, is Nico the fifth?
Nico over Moore. Nico over.
I would say Nico over Moore for now.
Over Sand.
I would lean towards yes. It's a weird scenario with him arriving in the summer for UCLA. There's a way where that probably doesn't.
But we've seen him play power conference football before at a decently high level.
More than Mateer.
And more than Sand.
Okay.
Right, if you're going.
So Schaefer, which five would you take? From which conference?
I'm probably nuts, but my favorite quarterback in there is Drew Aller. Out of all of those guys,
you're not nuts. That's the correct answer.
So if you like why I asked, Schaefer, I'll let you expound. I apologize, but let me just tell you where I'm going, and then the floor is yours. I think it's interesting to roll the dice on getting a fifth team in from the SEC and not taking the money from the conference game, bargaining for an AQ, when your fifth team is going to have to be quarterbacked by probably one of the aforementioned. And a lot of those guys we don't know anything about, really. We're just banking on best case scenario. That's where this came from, kind of.
Well, I think it's overall a light year in terms of star power for college football. This is sort of where guys are going to have an opportunity to kind of break out and make names for themselves. I mean, you have the names because they were names in the recruiting, or they're names because they're literal last name in the case of Arch Manning. But you don't really have quarterbacks that we have seen do it at a high level, or have, marquee moments or games. You have Sellers in there, and he had a really nice run at the end of the year, but is that a guy that the average college football fan really knows much about at this point in time? So, and then John Mateer played at Washington State, and how many people actually watched the Washington State game?
Hey, listen, this guy next to me has carved through every game and will tell you he beat up on the Sisters of the Poor and was awful against everyone else. Just ask him. He has them at his fingertips. This dude is losing his mind over the quarterback projections this year.
He played 2 Power conference schools last year. He played 2 Power conference schools last year.
Yeah, 2. I mean, and so we'll see how it all kind of plays out. If I had to pick between those two sides, I am picking the Big Ten only because I have Drew Aller as the best quarterback in the country going into.
Altmaier in that system's got to give you some comfort. He's pretty good in that.
Yeah,
he's
you're not going to project Altmaier as far as a draft pick, but in terms of being a college quarterback, I probably take him. It's either second if I'm taking both conferences. I'm taking him either second, just ahead of Nussmeier, or third, just behind Nussmeier. I think in terms of fit.
Can I give you a weird, it doesn't make sense from a physical standpoint, but it's just sort of the comfort that I have with them. Altmaier reminds me of a Trace McSorley. He's just a quality quarterback at the college level in the Big Ten that can do it with his legs, do it with his arms. You feel good late in games with him. He can kind of play in a variety. Now, the question I have is I really like Pat Bryant. I thought Pat Bryant was a big part of Illinois' success.
I think he was a reach in the draft, but he was certainly
he was really good for them.
He was really good for them.
I mean, I know he 12.
Do you know who the next Pat Bryant is going to be for Illinois? Because he kind of came through in big situations.
Like Ravi.
Our Illinois site does a really good job, and I follow Jeremy Warner on Twitter, and you would see these stats. I mean, Pat Bryant's catch percentage when the ball was thrown his way It was like one of the highest in all of college football. So that was like a safety belt that Altmaier had that they're going to have to replace. And he was really, really good. I think Pat Bryant's a really good college wide receiver. We'll see what it looks like in the pros, but I don't know that they have an immediate replacement for that.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And I think a big thing with me for Illinois, even though I do have Altmaier where I do, is I think they had their jump last year, right? So I expect sort of a status quo situation where I think we're assuming, like, Illinois is a weird team because I think there's actually a lot there, but I think we're assuming a second jump the same way that we're assuming a first jump for some of these other teams, whether it's, especially in the SEC, whether, like with Lagway in Florida, I look at them and I just go, okay, that dude's numbers were identical to Dylan's last year. Florida and Nebraska, I know that it went differently in terms of how the season progressed, but basically ended up with identical records last year. Like, why is Florida and Lagway a darling and Nebraska and Raiola is an afterthought? Like, I looked at this list, and I love you guys over at 24/7, and so that's the list that I used. I go, okay, Dylan is 6th in the conference on that list, which is fine, right? Okay, there's some unknowns in there. I get it. Yeah. But we've got lists where I've seen Lagway as number 2 in the country.
Clad had him at 7.
I've seen him at 7.
I mean, Bud Elliott put him at 1. I don't understand. You can disparage 24/7 Sports lists. That's okay. I'm not.
No, I'm not even trying to disparage the list. I'm just saying.
I want you to. I disparage it. I don't think the lists are good.
I think his point is, if Dylan's only 6th in the conference, how is Lagway top 5 in the country?
I have no idea. I don't know why Lagway would be in the top 10 in the country.
Like,
40% of his yards came against Tulane and Samford.
Thank you.
People, like, when they talk about DJ Lagway, they talk about his big second half against LSU, and he completed like 6 passes, and one of them was a 5-yard pass that went for 65. Like,
it doesn't mean he's not going to be good. Like, I think people need to hear that. Like, it's not bagging on Lagway. His potential is as much as we're taking some wild leaps.
Yeah, we're taking huge leaps of faith with him. That don't make sense.
The hill I am dying on all offseason, and even towards the end of last year, I don't think nationally Dylan Raiola got enough credit for being the only true freshman quarterback in the power conferences to play every single game. Yep. To go through that week in and week out. Like, if you are someone, and I am famously on this show not, that believes that Nebraska is going to make a giant jump, some of that has to be predicated on the fact that Dylan Raiola went through all of that as a freshman and has all of that as banked experience. Mm-hmm. He doesn't have to go on his first road trip again. He doesn't have to go through his first go-around of power conference coordinators trying to trick him and confuse him and do different things. He is at a different level of his game than Arch Manning, DJ Lagway. You could argue John Mateer. Like, what he went through in the best football conference in the country last year does not get credit nationally. They look at the touchdowns, they look at the interceptions, they look at the middle of the year when Nebraska couldn't do anything, and that gets held against him. It doesn't get held against DJ Lagway, who only played in like 7 full games all of last year, because it doesn't have to be. And he had a great half against LSU, and he threw for 455 yards against Samford and blah, 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 blah. I just don't think people give enough credit for going through that experience and then just assuming that Arch Manning isn't going to have any pitfalls when he has to go through it for the first full time. Assuming that DJ Lagway picked up enough playing as a part-time quarterback last year that he's ready to make that jump. Some of we really are reductive when we make it seem like it's an easy position to just step in, go against great coaches every single week in the Big Ten and the SEC and be prepared for what they have. I mean, again, if you are buying Nebraska for 2025, a lot of it has to be predicated on the big jump that Dylan Raiola gets to make because he's gone through all of this before. There's really not a new experience. He played in the horseshoe. He's been in fourth quarter situations in the Coliseum. He's been in the fourth quarter situation in Memorial Stadium. Like, he knows and understands what this is. That is a huge boost, I think, for him going into year 2 that these other quarterbacks don't have.
A couple of but guys. Would you rather be Aller with James Franklin or Nussmeier with Kelly?
Aller Franklin.
It's amazing that we don't disparage Drew Aller, but for his numbers,
We don't give
Oh,
him
they
up.
should be better. I mean, they like,
they're way good though. But he gets the ... and they
but
haven't had
the
anybody
problem
other than
is with Drew Aller, so much of it last year, like you take that USC game as an example, he had some good numbers in that game, but what he threw like 22 passes to Tyler Warren, and he's, the average depth of target wasn't downfield a whole lot. And so, like, some of it is he's just was asked to dink and dunk a lot last
that's
year.
Altmaier.
And then you flip forward to that Big Ten championship game against Oregon, and he's just letting that arm rip. And you're like, oh my God, this guy has some legitimate. And I thought that when he was a high school recruit, he had great film. I mean, he absolutely can throw the ball, but then you would, like I said, you'd watch early season Penn State, and it didn't look like they were really turning him loose. And then against Oregon, he's just kind of out there playing, and you could see the big arm. And it feels like they didn't have enough high quality wide receiver to kind of allow him to go that way, or he just fell in love with throwing to Tyler Warren so much that they weren't showcasing as much of what they could do on the offense. I felt like they had their, if they let Drew Aller play to his ability and open things up a little bit, I think people are going to be more impressed by him. But yeah, I mean, the numbers alone aren't that impressive. I'm going off of pedigree, what I liked about his film, what his actual physical talent. I think he is as talented as anybody in the country. I really do.
I'm not asking you to take a deep dive into South Carolina's offensive coordinator because Loggins has only been there, I think, 2 years. But for a Sellers kind of second-year OC there and a Raiola second-year kind of OC in Nebraska, would you rather be in Columbia or Lincoln?
I mean, I would rather Dana Holgerson just in general. Like, and that's not
it's just
it's not a lot of it's not a lot of disrespect to Sellers. I think if you look back, he had some big games against some light defenses in the SEC. He did, I think, tear up Oklahoma, so you got to give him a lot of credit for that. But I just don't know what to do with him. Like, I don't know that I believe that he's destined to repeat and build off of the last 5 games that he played at the end of the regular season last year. I just don't know that I'm there with Sellers the way that certainly Brad Crawford and some other guys at 24/7 Sports are. But some of that is I just don't know that I buy it. And then I go back to, I didn't watch a lot of South Carolina late. I think I watched the Illinois game.
They have a new
I watched him against LSU, and he was I believe thrown into a tough spot there in that game and performed as well as he could have. But that one's kind of a wait and see for me. Like, I'd have a tough time putting him in my top 10 quarterbacks.
But we're very comfortable with Sark and Manning.
Well, yeah, I think because Sark's history is what it is. And, I do wonder how he would feel about Arch Manning if his last name wasn't Manning. I think that carries a lot of weight in the whole discussion because we really haven't seen him a ton. And when we have seen him, he's been perfectly fine to acceptable. But it's not like he's blown anybody's socks off at this point. It's not like Quinn Ewers blew anybody's socks off. So maybe Texas is built in a way where if you get highly competent quarterback play, you're just going to be fine. You don't have to be a world beater.
Yeah, I do wonder. Do you think Manning is more dynamic than Ewers was?
We haven't, excuse me. We have not seen a reason to believe that he necessarily is. I don't know that Ewers wasn't regarded as dynamic. I think Manning can move a little bit. I mean, I think he can throw off, off schedule, if you will, but I don't know that he's going to be a highlight machine. I don't know that. I just think he's going to play a comfortable quarterback spot.
I do think Texas is going to be really good again, though, obviously.
I just think they have a ton of talent. I mean, they've done a great job amassing talent on both sides of their line. Their defensive line was pretty much the reason they beat Arizona State at times in that playoff game. Their defensive line, I think, is going to be good again. They have athletes at all levels on the defense. They're not going to overwhelm teams, but they're just going to be better in a lot of aspects. Like I just think they have a very well-built program right now.
That's our guy, Mike Schaefer, Husker247. Schaefer, appreciate the time. As always, good stuff.
All right, guys. Have a good one. Thanks for having me on.